now, right? And she has been making a name for herself, I think, in the last couple of months, joining, especially the women in networking Globinars each month, bringing a lot of insight, a lot of expertise, and so much personality. And I'm so excited to have her join us today and talk about workforce and talk about business and what that looks like generationally and culturally. And yeah, I'm very excited. Marisa, thank you so much for joining us. And please go ahead, talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and get our conversation started today.
Thank you so much, Sibeli. And thank you everyone who made it today. Good morning, good afternoon. I also want to call out Mangwi. Thank you because we emailed. And thank you, Mangwi, for being here today. So, yes, I actually am going to share a deck that I prepared for today's conversation. And just like Sibeli said, and thank you so much, Sibeli, for your beautiful and generous introduction. I just joined the chamber in January of this year, so I'm still learning the waters, navigating the waters of the global chamber. But I am very, very excited to be in this conversation today. Feel free to interrupt me. I can talk for the Olympics. Okay, so feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand, Sipeli. Thank you for helping me manage, interrupt me as needed. Okay, and no offense taken. My conversation for today is about global sovereignty and my very personal roadmap for the conscious entrepreneur. My name is Marisa Ortiz, and I am the founder of Intercultural Talent. That is the name of my business. We do talent development or employee workshops and coaching for the global workforce. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Oh, by the way, you guys can see the projection as it's intended. Okay, great. I'm so glad you guys are, I'm not looking at my notes. Okay, great. Awesome. So, oh, sorry about that. I went a little too fast. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my roots. I was born and raised in Torreon in the state of Coahuila. So I included a little map of Mexico as where the little red star, that's where Torreon is at the border of Durango and Coahuila, two big states in the north of Mexico. I was born and raised there, and Torreon, my city, is considered the most diverse city of Mexico. And the picture on the right is actually a picture that I took from the house where I grew up, and that is a mosque. The very first Muslim mosque ever built in Mexico was across the street from the house where I grew up. So, something very peculiar about me is that I was born in the 1980. I'm just going to tell you right now, full disclosure, I'm 45 years old, proudly, a geriatric millennial, but I grew up in a Muslim neighborhood in North Mexico of the 80s and 90s. Well, the mosque was built in 1990. So the 80s don't count as far as the mosque is concerned. But Torreon is a community with a lot of Lebanese, Mexican, Syrian, but now Lebanese, Syrian, Palestinian Mexicans. At that time, they arrived to Mexico at the late 1800s with Turkish passports of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. And of course, many Spaniards. Actually, we also have a great community of Chinese Mexicans and Japanese Mexicans. So Torreon happens to be the most diverse city in Mexico. It just doesn't get a lot of publicity. So, as you can imagine, growing up in that environment in a Muslim neighborhood in Mexico exposed me to the world, exposed me to cultural diversity in ways that I hadn't imagined. But I migrated to El Paso, Texas, which you can see in the map as well, border town with Chihuahua, where my parents are from originally, Chihuahua cities. I went to UT El Paso, the University of Texas at El Paso, and I was a double major in French and political science. And I had fantastic experiences as a college student in France, in Kuwait, in the Middle East, and in Mexico City. So that was a little bit of my upbringing. Then, after I graduated, I moved to San Antonio, Texas, which you can also see right there on the map. It's not very far. And I've stayed here since 2002 and built a career as an HR professional, doing a lot of training and development, doing nonprofit work. I worked in nonprofits for a while as well. And then I transitioned to tech, where I got connected with the world way before Zoom. We were doing WebEx back in the day. I joined tech in early 2007 and became a woman of color in tech at that time, kind of riding the wave. So that's just a little bit about me. But let's move on, because today in 2026 I've been an entrepreneur for a little over 10 years. Of course, I started like many, just self-employment, just like gig economy. Let me try this out. Full disclosure, my own entrepreneurship started with my motherhood. I became an entrepreneur or self-employed because I wanted more freedom. I wanted more time with my child. I had these ideas about how I wanted to raise my child, and then I had a second child later. And for me, entrepreneurship is in tandem with motherhood, which might be, I don't know how unique it is, but might be a great influence on my perspective. So at the 10 plus years of service, I have trained, these are some of the numbers, in over 45 different countries on Zoom. Of course, I haven't traveled to over 45 different countries in person. In person, it has been 8 different countries. And I have trained over 1,000 professionals around the world. I serve in, of course, English, Spanish, which is my mother tongue, and I speak French decent, so it's very rustique, rusty, and that's why I'm going to the Rencontre en Français with Cassandra pour pratiquer, to practice my French, because it's quite rusty, and I also speak a little bit of Brazilian Portuguese. My intention was to learn the languages of my hemisphere, where our hemisphere in the United States. And the regions that I serve, where clients, continue to bless me with their work, is in the Americas, of course, in Latin Europe. And I've been very blessed to be traveled to Asia, to Pakistan, India, Vietnam, and Japan to facilitate customized training over there in person. So just to share a little bit about my recent experience in the 10 last plus years that I've been an entrepreneur. So, to talk about global sovereignty, I think that we have to go back a little bit in history. So, thank you for your patience as I make my way to my point. But as an entrepreneur, I really like to reclaim the word and the concept of entrepreneurship to its true origins. When we look at anthropology, we're talking about 17,000 BCE, that the very first proof of entrepreneurship happened on the planet, which was during the obsidian trade in what today is New Guinea. Okay, so entrepreneurship is our human nature. We have been exchanging goods and services for millennia, and you see it right there, the whole sequence. Then we had the agricultural evolution, which of course, created a surplus and the first marketplaces on earth. And then we had the very, very important mother civilizations of Mesopotamia and Phoenicia. Then, between that and Age of Discovery, there's a big gap there that I didn't include, but we're talking about the Greco-Roman era. We're talking about the Ottoman Empire, Islam, about the Song Dynasty in China. I mean, a lot of things happen. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, we've been entrepreneurial for a very long time as humans on Earth. Something that I want to bring to your attention, of course, in the 15th and 17th centuries, the age of discovery, that was a big shift. The concept of risk-bearing nature of entrepreneurship shifted from individual local traders to state-backed corporate syndicates. That is where entrepreneurship as we know it today kind of emerged. And then right at that same time, colonization, right? It happened. So it's they are two sides of the same coin. The European merchants and monarchs invented limited liability and joint stock corporations at that time. So it was not until 1730 that the term entrepreneur, which came from the French entreprendre, emprender, was coined by Irish French economist Richard Cantillon, not really sure. Then we had mercantilism. So just to kind of like go back in history, when did we start being entrepreneurial as humans? And it was since the obsidian trade, but it most definitely has evolved very rapidly and very importantly since the term entrepreneurship was coined. So there I have just a little bit of the rest of the history of entrepreneurship. So nowadays, when we talk about entrepreneurship and leadership, I think that we tend to associate it with very contemporary history of entrepreneurship, whether it comes from the titans of steel and oil like Rockefeller and Carnegie, or where it comes from the tech titans, in the Silicon Valley. We have very contemporary ideas and examples of what is to be entrepreneurial, when in reality, we as humans are entrepreneurial by nature, right? So something that I want to bring to your attention is the myth of the billionaire. You know, it's something that I hear a lot in the world of entrepreneurship and the millionaires and the billionaires. And I want to talk about the cost of that ruthless scaling that we have seen in history in the last hundreds of years. So something important that us as a group of women at the Chamber are very much aware is invisible work. Traditional scaling frameworks assume an unpaid, invisible domestic support system handling life behind the scenes, right? We, as professional women and entrepreneurial women, know that very well. So I strongly recommend, if you haven't checked it out, the book by Rose Hackman, fantastic British, and lives in the United States, in Detroit, author and journalist. She wrote this phenomenal book, Emotional Labor, that I strongly recommend. Traces back and explains things in a beautiful way. But absolutely, as women, we very well understand the invisible work that shapes our lives, that goes behind the scenes, that is never taken into consideration in the ruthless systems of scaling that today exist in the traditional male centered entrepreneurial world. There is a hidden subsidy, right? In her book, Rose Hackman highlights how women provide the free caregiving and emotional work that subsidizes patriarchal business success. And we even see that at the workplace. We even see it in these big corporations in tech. We see, you know, it's across the board in different industries, in different sectors. Women are still expected to do a lot more emotional work, even at the workplace, than, you know, men are not expected. And it creates a lot more levels of complexity for women to continue growing within the corporate ladder. And we as women are very much aware of that. But I want to give you a little bit of stats from a global standpoint. The data says that the caregiving gap, we women perform 76.2% of all unpaid care work globally. We spend 3 times more hours than men caring for children and the elderly. And I'm talking here like globally, right? There's going to be major differences in regions and countries, but you get me. This exclusion, actually, there are 708 million women around the world who are entirely locked out of the global workforce because they have these caregiving realities. And venture capital, women owned businesses receive less than 3% of the global venture capital, keeping wealth concentrated in a few male hands, right? So when we hear all these great scalability systems to grow your business for your first million and and then becoming a billionaire, let's just keep that in mind. You know, what does it entail, these systems that we know today? And what are the consequences, or what I call the dark corners of the 1%? What is the real cost of this excess wealth in the hands of a few? The illusion of success, right? Mainstream business literature tells us to worship and emulate billionaires, ignoring the environmental destruction and moral bankruptcy at the top, right? I mean, we also know as a fact that the planet, our home, our true home, is in danger, that is suffering, that we've been damaging the planet in this big oil and mining, everything. These huge millionaires and billionaires have accumulated this excessive wealth at the cost, number one, of the planet, right, of ecosystems. The wealthiest 1% produce more carbon pollution than the poorest two-thirds of humanity combined. Right. So what is the cost of this excess wealth, of the millions and the billions, right? Who actually pays those millions and billions? I think this is another uncomfortable truth, another elephant in the room that, it's being excluded from the entrepreneurial conversation, which is the Epstein exposure. The unsealed Epstein files reveal how the ultra wealthy elite weaponized capital to operate a transnational trafficking ring exploiting women and children. And even at the top 1%, women were not safe, right? We know in the UK, actually, there have been way more important consequences of these files than in the United States. So we had a prince that's no longer a prince, whose daughters were not even safe from this patriarchal, terrible practices. And Even the United States First Lady, right, came out of the blue to disassociate herself, even though there is of course a lot of evidence and things that are yet to be explained and exposed. But why do I bring this? What am I doing by bringing this Debbie Downer conversation? Because it is part of the entrepreneurial, the millionaire and billionaire conversation that I think should be part of the conversation all the time. There is a global underbelly of human trafficking that creates over $150 billion, $150 billion market where women and girls account for 61%. So there is also, of course, boys and young men of all detected victims globally, heavily impacting the US, the UK, the Canada, basically Western countries, advanced Western countries. And something interesting that we've also seen, the generosity inversion. Billionaires do not need this excess wealth. When women achieve millionaire status, such as a former wife of Jeff Bezos, um, Mackenzie Scott, right? Such as the former wife of Bill Gates, Melinda Gates. Well, they actually are the most generous millionaires, billionaires ever in history. They statistically give back to their communities far more generously than men ever do. Right. So the few millionaires and billionaire women actually do invest it back generously into the community. But it's also interesting to see, how they get to that status in a very patriarchal way, such as through marriage. Right. So given all this, and thank you for your patience going through the very unpleasant parts of my presentation, what is my personal recommendation as women leaders, global leaders, and entrepreneurs? How do we reclaim back our sovereignty? And this is my humble opinion on it. First of all, I think all of us, we need to reclaim our ancestral wisdom. And what do I mean by that? Something that happened in colonization and we continue to work on in post colonial societies is the erasure of our ancestral practices and concepts and wisdom that through the resilience of indigenous, aboriginal, however you want to call them, groups, ethnicities, communities, they're still out there. And thanks to the internet, yeah, and thanks to technology, we all have access to our ancestral wisdom. And we don't have to stick to our own ethnicities. You don't have to take a 23andMe and, assess your ancestry to discover your own roots. This is patrimony of humanity. We're a global human family, and this ancestral wisdom belongs to all of us. So whatever resonates with you, go for it and reconnect with it. Why? Because there has been an important colonial erasure. Colonialism deliberately, erased indigenous and community-centered frameworks to install white Western heterosexual male-dominated leadership standards. So that's why it's important to be intentional about books and literature and concepts. Where do they come from? Right? Maybe we can be more intentional in diversifying the literature and the thought leadership that we follow and that we consider important to take and make all of our decisions. Reclaiming ancestral roots from indigenous wisdom to ancient traditions in Africa, India, China, anywhere around the world, there has been ancestral wisdom that has been buried down a little bit by the most recent colonial powers. But our ancestral wisdom in the planet does prioritize planetary balance and collective harmony. So gender equity is embedded in it. We did live primitive times, if you may, in which women were same equal players as men in society, partners, and not only men and women, not only the gender balance, but also in communion with Mother Earth. We lived for thousands of years in our indigenous and aboriginal past. We lived in communion with the environment. We took only what we needed and we thrived. We continue to thrive as humans. So we've done it in the past. It's colonialism onwards that things have gotten quite complicated. Very importantly, I also recommend for us to have clear definition on our own values. So values-based rootedness. Aligning your life and business with unshakable personal values, not socially constructed corporate roles. Right. And that requires quite a bit of inner work. pillow talk, right? Reflection and analysis of the self. And having a very busy lifestyle is not conducive of this profound self awareness. So maybe, chasing the millions and the billions, maybe that's why, even after all these millions and billions, these guys, they still, men still commit suicide at much higher rates than women around the world. Men are still quite depressed as things, and I'm not doing like battle of the sexes, men against women, right? I'm just, trying to bring that perspective, right, to the conversation. So I think it's more important to have clarity of our own values and to live our lives based on those values instead of chasing the traditional millionaire and billionaire scalable systems of growth, whether you own a business or if you are a professional woman, the traditional corporate roles. Now, in my business and intercultural talent, where I am here with my team to serve those visionary leaders and mission driven organizations that care about the planet and care about people and want to do business and want to work and serve for the betterment of humanity. These are my chosen tools that I have incorporated into my business, not the only ones, but we at Intercultural Talent use Clifton Strengths or Strengths Finder. That is our cornerstone service. I strongly recommend, if you have never taken your Clifton Strengths, take your assessment and discover your top 5 strengths. Clifton Strengths is a talent development tool that measures your level of talent in the 34 themes of human talent developed by Gallup. The polling or research company is the only science backed or research backed tool of its kind. It's quite effective. I discovered it a long time ago in December of 2006. So it's going to be 20 years that I took my strengths assessment. And when I worked in tech, I learned about it and I just brought it to my business. That's how I started my business, just doing my strengths classes, customized strengths classes. And I strongly, strongly recommend you checking it out. But there's not the only tool. There's another fantastic set of books, and this is my chosen ancestral wisdom because I'm Mexican, I'm biased. I love Toltec tradition. Toltec culture was the one that we believe built the actual pyramids in central Mexico that then later the Aztec Empire kind of like reclaimed. But the Toltec culture is even prior to the Aztec culture in Mexico, and of course Aztec is Mexica. That's where the word Mexico comes from. So this book's by Don Miguel Ruiz, starting with the Four Agreements, which is a very popular book, and there's many others. He has a series of books called the Toltec Wisdom series. I have used very successfully at the workplace. Actually, Toltec wisdom is quite attractive in North Asia. So that is what brought me to Japan, is to customize a workshop on the Four Agreements. Because interestingly so, North Asians, in my experience, resonate very, very much with indigenous tradition, which makes perfect sense because if we think, anciently, where do indigenous peoples in the Americas came from? Asia, right? So makes perfect sense that contemporary North Asians just cannot get enough of indigenous traditions. So I love the Four Agreements. I love everything that Don Miguel Ruiz has written. I use it in my business, but I know it's not the only one. I'm not limiting you. I'm just sharing with you the tools that we use in my business. A fellow member of the Global Chamber, a fantastic lady by the name of Terry Morrison, has written this series of books that are my go-to books when it comes to intercultural intelligence, when it comes to protocol and working in other cultures. It's called Kiss, Bow, Shake Hands. It is a series of books. I strongly recommend them when I have gigs, assignments to customize workshops specifically on intercultural intelligence. This is where I go to. These are the books that I consult to provide the nuts and bolts when that happens. In my business, I see that less and less because the more digital we become, it's more about the global, remotely connected protocol, and that's more kind of digital based, right? We still have a little bit of this, but not as much as back in the 80s and 90s that men would be assigned to travel overseas and they would travel with their wives and children, right? And they, sometimes would require, would receive, not all the time, intercultural training. And last but not least, the newest tool that we have adopted at Intercultural Talent is a phenomenal framework of nonviolent communication, specifically the one by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. Peace be upon him. NVC, short, we call it NVC. This is a framework that is widely used in conflict resolution by NGOs, specifically in Eastern Europe after the 90s, the conflict of the 90s in Eastern Europe, Serbia, Yugoslavia. A lot of NGOs brought NVC and had to communities and had incredible success. So it's quite popular across Eastern Western Europe and in some pockets of the United States. But, the book is right there. I strongly recommend checking it out. It's a beautiful framework of very deep recognition of needs and precise emotional expression that we just cannot get enough of. So just wanted to share with you the four main tools that we use in my business. Nonetheless, there are many more fantastic tools. And I think, yep, I had one more. Sorry for my animation, my imperfect animations. But I also strongly recommend these books that have been quite valuable to me as a global entrepreneur or someone who serves around the world. The first one is called The Values Compass. What 101 countries teaches about purpose, life, and leadership is by Dr. Mandeep Rai. Dr. Rai is also a journalist, a UK born Sikh of Indian descent doctor. Fantastic framework on values. I strongly recommend it. And coincidentally, the three authors of these books are all Indian, of Indian descent, right? Then in the middle, I have a very different book that is not talked about in business. It's called Radical Awakening. This is a book by women for women by Dr. Shefali. Dr. Shefali, her first name is Shefali, her last name is Sabari, Shefali Sabari. She is actually an authority in parenting. That's really her bread and butter is parenting. Actually, she calls it conscious parenting. So check it out. If that's something that you might be interested in. But this book she wrote in during pandemic, and it's not necessarily about parenting at all. It's about us, about women, and the realities I talked about earlier in my presentation, and what is as an entrepreneur herself, what is her take, and it has been quite empowering and quite positive for me. So I strongly recommend her book tremendously. And last but not least, another very powerful Indian woman in the United States, Reshma Sujani. She's the one that wrote Brave Not Perfect. And this book just came out also post pandemic, didn't get a lot of traction either. Pay Up, The Future of Women in Work and Why It's Different Than You Think. And it's She's an attorney, so it's a pretty dry and factual book on pay inequity, and it's basically she telling the male leaders of the world just pay women fairly, as simple as that. Stop bringing down salaries just because she's a woman, right? So those are just some other books out of the, of course, many more fantastic books out there that I personally recommend that I think can help a woman entrepreneur, a professional woman navigate these waters. So I finally get to the point of conscious entrepreneurship, based on everything that I have talked about. I think, in my opinion, the most important piece is the first one, which is identity. Having clarity on who you are. Who are you? Root your professional growth in your unique purpose, explicitly rejecting patriarchal scripts of compliance. Reclaim a peaceful, balanced lifestyle that rejects scaling and the colonial spirit of hoarding, right? Yes, we scale, we grow our businesses. I'm not saying stay small. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying don't sacrifice your peace, your physical health, your mental health, your family, or what you consider dear to you for the millions and the billions. That's what I am saying, right? We can all choose to live a peaceful, balanced lifestyle in which we are incredibly happy. We wake up every day loving our lives, rooted in that self awareness, and knowing that I am not going to grow my business in the billions and the billions. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to serve the global human family, to give my gifts back, what I have been given, all the amazing things and blessings that I've been given. I want to give them back to the global human family. And in return, I make great money. Yay. And I have a wonderful life and I enjoy my children. And I was going crazy the month of May because it's the last month of school here in the United States. Because I'm a mom too, crazy stuff. Profound self-awareness. I couldn't emphasize this more. Leverage ancestral wisdom, any ancestral wisdom that resonates with you, and deep understanding of your own cultural lenses first, right? So when people ask me, how do you do it? When you work with people from all these different countries, even working in the United States, you don't have to travel. Even working just in the US is so incredibly diverse, right? How do you do it? I think we have to be very rooted and very much aware of our own cultural biases as individuals first. To start with the self, right? Like, what are your own cultural biases that influence the way you judge yourself and you judge others? And where do they come from? Know your true self before attempting to interpret or navigate the cultures of others. I think that's key. Before we jump into learning how to work with so and so and how to work with this other part of the world, and let me more about the Chinese, or let me learn more about Indians. Do you know yourself? Right? Can you teach a class on your own cultural biases, right? And how they impact in business? Global engagement. Offer your unique talents and gifts to the global human family in a respectful and organic way. Let things happen. Let the universe, that's the way I see it. Let things work themselves out, right? Let the universe work its magic. Set your intentions, do your work, remain grounded and peaceful and healthy, and let things unfold. Honor and respect the cultures of others and unconditionally, provided they do not violate universal human rights. To what point do we respect other cultures? If it violates human rights, then we have to call it out because we have a universal declaration of human rights and no cultural practice should trump over that. That is where we agreed as a global human family. This is the limit, the universal declaration of human rights. So as long as that is not being violated, we can learn why people do what they do, why their cultures have those practices or ideas, and we can respect it because we also come from cultures that have practices that others might consider quite different. Sovereign boundaries. Build your network, team, and client relationships entirely out of shared, unshakable values. So this is a question I get a lot when I teach strengths classes. People have the assumption, the idea that they need to hire based on strengths, like, oh, I need to bring people that have more influence and strengths because my team, that's why we have the least. According to strengths, according to Gallup's research, that doesn't really work. Because when people take the assessment as a candidate, they don't answer as authentically. So you don't want to give the Clifton Strengths assessment to candidates, right? So what we have seen in the research that works best and what has worked for me in my business is to hire not just staff, but clients, vendors based on values, because that's where the conflict arises. That's what your definition of professional may clash with their definition of professional because they may have very different values, right? Choose to flex across borders when necessary without ever sacrificing your personal boundaries. So that is a conversation we have in the intercultural talk, right? Do I expect others to flex to me? So there are a lot of systems out there, a lot of books, a lot of frameworks out there about intercultural awareness. I'm aware that there are out there. Again, the only one that I endorse and use respectfully, Darius Morrison work. Like, do the work, unpack it yourself. Don't try to get the one book that solves everything. I find that to be quite impossible. But I think some authors would say that, that in the global south, people need to adapt, right, to the global north and to learn how to speak English in a certain way, how to pronounce in a certain way, right? Like, you can have a British accent, you can have an American accent, but if you have a brown accent, you have to change that. You have to have your business plan in a certain way. right? Like there are those who believe in the, kind of the standard. Some other authors are like, no, you need to flex, right? We have a saying in Spanish, a la tierra que fueres, haz lo que vieres. When in Rome, right? When in Rome, I don't know, do us Romans. I never knew the second part of the phrase because I was never told in ESL what was the second part of the phrase, but you know what I'm saying? You know? So some authors were like, yeah, no, you flex, you adapt. That's what I was told as a 16-year-old college student, right? In the United States. You adapt. You need to overpronounce your consonants and you need to learn the systems to quote properly and all that stuff. So, do we flex? Do we not flex? I believe we need to flex. I believe if we are being hosted, if you're being invited to their culture, that we flex to their culture as much as we can, as long as it doesn't sacrifice my own personal boundaries. Things that I just don't do. I don't do anywhere. Like, I don't need octopus anywhere. Well, I just don't eat octopus. I just don't. Like I'm sure yours is delicious, but I'm gonna stick to my fish and shrimp. You know what I mean? Like just I don't do that. Right. I think staying true to ourselves is key to navigating the global waters and to remain sovereign and to practice that conscious entrepreneurship. Accept that not everyone shares your values. And these I draw from Talk with Wisdom, and release them peacefully. At the end of the day, it is not personal. It is never personal. It is never personal, right? We have to, I think in the global way of connecting, like today, balancing the local, balancing the realities of our towns where we live, right? It's not easy. And I think it's very important to remind ourselves that it's never personal. Is one of the agreements of the four agreements of Toltec wisdom. And I think it's more about continuing to align with the right people, whether they're in another country, another continent, or they're your neighbor. If they're your neighbor, yay, you're lucky. But I think it's about continuing that values alignment everywhere we go in all of the angles of our lives and placing our attention on those people that are receptive and those people that are values aligned and continue to build your village that way instead of expecting people to change, right? Because we are the only ones that can change ourselves. That's it. So that is, I mean, I don't know if went over my 15 minutes, most likely, but that is just my very brief deck that I prepared for you. Please connect with me. If we haven't, I'm in San Antonio, Austin, Texas, and my name is Marisa, and it's my pleasure to present today.
Thank you so much, Marita. Amazing presentation. So much to unpack there. I'm
I know.
just
I know.
taking it all in. So much to unpack. Thank you so much. Um, okay, guys, what I think we're going to do, we've got about 15 minutes left. First of all, I just, Marita, that's where I'm at in my life, also 45 years old, and it took me so long. And I've been driving and scaling businesses for the last, 20 years, and I'm finally at this place in my life where I don't care about millions of billions. I just want a small little piece of my earth for me and my children. And so I'm learning to kind of like scale back now and to understand the importance of like what I really want in life. And so I think this is so profound what you're saying. And I wish that I would have known this 15 years earlier. And I probably wouldn't have
Oh,
taken it in the same way, right? Like I
we
probably
weren't
at this
ready.
point in my life, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Thank
I
you.
think
Thank
at
you,
this point
Sabine.
in my life, I'm just there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies, I want to be able to just give you a few minutes to introduce yourselves, uh, tell us a little bit about who you are. And if you want to comment, ask questions to Marisa, I think we'll do it that way. We'll give each other about, 30, 60 seconds and let's just get around the room and say hi to everybody. So perfect. Let's start with Cassandra. It's great to see you, Cassandra.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cassandra Ayala Nájera, so first generation Mexican Canadian. My parents are Mexican, so Marisa. It's good to see you. But I speak French, Spanish, and English. I have my own business, which is called Embracing Culture, where I run a magazine and identity work, brand work, how to actually help businesses, culture-driven businesses. That's what I was looking for. That's pretty much my work. So nice to meet you all. I'm sorry I have a stuffy nose, so it's kind of awkward, but I just nice to see you all, everybody.
Thank you. And Kashfia, is that correct?
Yes, perfectly pronounced. Thank you. Amazing presentation, Marissa. It was so holistic and it touched upon so much points that are so much more important now than what we used to think. Like I will say, what Sipeli, is that the right way? Did I say it? Okay, all right. Um,
Perfect.
okay. So yeah, what she was saying that 15 years ago, I'm 42 this year, and I feel that if I had known, I thought like this maybe 12, 13 years ago would have been even better, but it's okay. I mean, better late than never, right? Now that we are connecting. And I feel like this is something I think women are ahead in this, that I feel as women leaders or women, entrepreneurs, women contributors to the society are thinking and feeling this way ahead of men. I think of course, there are very, emotionally intelligent and men who are also seeing things this way, but I feel like we are doing it a little more and we are more, it's almost like we know something that they don't. And I'm glad that, if we can be the torchbearers, why not? My full name is Kashfia Firdos. I'm an auditor by profession. I've been doing that for almost 20 years now. I recently started my own consultancy firm for compliance, audit, and due diligence governance. And I'm also a mentor for women leadership firm where we focus on women who are entry level or have worked 3, 4 years and help them, on their leadership journey, and we can guide them and nurture them anyway with our own experience. I speak English, Bangla. I'm originally from Bangladesh, and also Urdu. I can read and write Arabic, and I divide my time now between the US, Thailand, and Bangladesh. So that's me. Thank you so much again, Marissa, for a great presentation.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Happy
Oh,
Eid.
yes, Eid Mubarak,
Eid
everyone. Thank
Mubarak.
you.
And Beatrice.
Hello, everyone. Beatriz Rodriguez. I'm Venezuelan. I live in Brazil since 2017. I work in quality uh, uh, for cosmetics, sanitaries, food industries, and pharma also. So in a way, working compliance too, but it's more than only compliance. Also, it's more as quality as an strategic for business, no, to make the business better. Woman support also was part of my career always. I have 4 kids and I was able to build a strong career in corporate business. I worked almost 24 years in Procter& Gamble. And now I have my own consultancy practices in quality, industrial microbiology, open innovation, and also I'm a mentor for several women too. So uh, having a career and motherhood as an integral part of your life is the way I always see not only building my career, also doing business. And people, mainly women that believe that this cannot be done, I hope by example you can do all this and not sacrificing personal life because of that. You just need to set your boundaries and be able to communicate that to the organizations for which you are working on, and I'm sure you will be able to reach an alignment of how to do the work without compromising your personal life. That's definitely something that I believe. Values, also that you mentioned, Marisa, is very important to understand that not only your own values, also when the values, what is important for the people that is working with you or the other companies when you are having a kind of partnership, no? And communications, many things are broken due to miscommunications. This is something that we need to really invest in our time to understand how others are perceiving your behaviors, your words, and your gestures, no, the way you behave. Not always, it's so easy to miscommunicate. So if you understand that, you will try to be better always. So thank you very much, Marisa. It was really wonderful.
Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you. And Vilma.
Morning. Thank you. I used to participate in this event last year. I am a real estate broker in Florida and North Carolina. I moved to North Carolina this year, and I haven't been able to really participate in many things for all the things that come transfer to a new state and a new place. But Marisa, I really enjoyed this presentation. It is something that uh, kind of makes you feel alive and brings so many motivation ideas and things for the day. So thank you so much for that. Um, I have been in my real estate career, I have been an advocate not only in affordable, attainable, and sustainable housing, but also in global. I am a huge global uh, um, kind of partner for many countries and many real estate organizations. I understand that culture and doing business with the global village requires understanding of their cultural values. I went to training with MIT in doing business with the world, in cultural awareness for global business, in negotiations. And one thing I learned is what we see when we meet a person from different culture is just the top of the iceberg. The real person really offers so much and is something that we need to do in our daily life to avoid what you were mentioning, Marisa, the bias and the gentrification that we used to have just because someone looks like someone or talks like someone or is of certain region. By the way, I'm originally from Colombia, was living in Florida, now moved to North Carolina for, as I said, for family. I have two daughters. I'm proud of them. One is an ocean and systems engineer, and my other daughter is a Duke Neuro MS neuroimmunology doctor. So they are really accomplished, the girls, and they understand all we talk about. And I love them so much. So thank you so much. I appreciate so much this presentation and being part, at least participating some times in this group. Really, really is amazing. And I am open for real estate in North Carolina. This is a beautiful place where business is booming. Major hubs of corporations are moving here, like there is an area called Triangle Research, and um, Apple is coming with 2 billion hub expansion. Also Biogen, Fujifilm, Novartis, 77.1 million. So this area is really growing a lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Vilma, and welcome back to the Global Chamber. So happy that you were able to rejoin the Women in Networking. I know we've got just a couple minutes left. Mengwi, and then Antoinette, Laura, and Demetrius, if you guys would like to come in and share, if you just put your hand up so I know to call on you, otherwise I won't bother. But Mengwi, would you like to do an introduction? And did I
Yes,
pronounce that correct? Okay.
Yeah, it's Mangui. Hi, my name is Mangui Fawn, and first of all, I want to thank Marisa for inviting me for this wonderful presentation. I really like the fact that you, I would say, pretty much womanizing leadership and entrepreneurship and so forth, seeing it from a different perspective. So I really like that. So my name is Mangui Fawn, as I said. I'm based in Houston, Texas. This is my first time attending the Women's Online Networking event with Global Chamber. And I work with women that have been through like major life transitions, have had either surgery, trauma, or and something that's pretty much shifted their life in a deep way. And pretty much it's more people that are in the rebuilding phase and are trying to dream again and live and have an impactful life. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And I left my information in the chat. Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you. Beautiful, Bingley. Then welcome and thanks for joining us today. And Laura.
Hey, sorry about this. Okay, so I'm sorry. I don't think I'm on camera because I was traveling and I don't think I can turn on my camera now, unfortunately. So sorry about that. So I'm Laura Fredrickson and my company is Auravia HR. I basically was in a CHRO and executive HR role for over 20 years. And I've recently stepped out of that role and started Auravia HR to do CHRO advisory. I also have a very strong background in HR technology, and I've been getting very involved in AI and all things tech throughout my entire career, but AI certainly most recently within the last, I don't know, since 2024. Um, and so, what my business does is whether a company has an HR department or they don't, I have the ability to come in and I can help them from a CHRO advisory standpoint. So, if they need to plan for scaling, if they need to plan for compliance, governance, those sorts of things to get ready to scale or headcount, those sorts of things, I can help put those things together. But my niche is being able to also come in and assess the technology that they currently have that they're using for their environment. And a lot of HR folks don't particularly care for the vendor relations, the RFP, the connecting all of the HR tech to your CRMs or your accounting systems, things like that. And I actually enjoy that part. So that's one of the things that I'm doing as well, is helping teams select their HR tech, what fits in their business, and making sure that the business, the pet tech, and the people strategies are all aligned. So that's what I do.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. And Demetrius.
Good morning. I just want to say this has been so fantastic. All of you that introduced yourself and the presenter, this was so wonderful for me. So thank you so much for putting it together. I am an international business lawyer, and I just want to tell you one thing. When I got out of law school, I saw everyone like lining up, wearing blue suits, like taking on this persona that I knew I could never do. I gone, I thought, oh, I'm gonna go into this world, think about money, money, money. And when it was time to graduate, I was just like, there's no way that I want to do this boring stuff. So I didn't even interview, not even with one company. I was like, no way I'm wearing a blue and black suit. If you saw me now, you would be like, Demetrius, you're in a blue and a black suit. But so I started backwards, but there was something in me that said, wait a minute, if you love what you do, you love yourself, the money has got to come. Now, I got to tell you, it was a little bit slow coming, but now I'm at a point where I'm able to do what I love and push for the billion because I'm going to the billion flow. I didn't give up that dream yet. I'm not ready. I'm like, okay, let me see what that billion stuff is like. And one other comment that I realized when I think about my family home, in my family home, Anheuser-Busch, my mom owned a bar. So Anheuser-Busch, the year that, I don't know, I guess like maybe when I was about 5, they did a series on African queendoms, and my mom put up all of those pictures. And I
Mhm.
didn't even realize until maybe about 10 years ago what that really did to my psyche. So I think when we hear from powerful women like yourselves, when we see powerful women, when we can't be quiet, is what I'm saying, because there's a generation that's watching every single thing that we do. And so I just want to thank you all as continue on your week, for showing up as you, for putting this together, for being like just amazing people. And I learned so much today. I do want a list of the books, though. I did put that in the chat. The books I couldn't write them all down fast enough, and they look like fabulous. I'm like, that's my summer reading list. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Demetria. Perfect way to end. Ladies, I just want to thank you all for joining us this month. I'm so excited about what we're building here and part of the Global Chamber and just being able to build real community and relationships and be cheerleaders for each other because we are all out here building our businesses and creating uh, not only pathways for ourselves, but for our children and for our families. And I love what we do in the Global Chamber and how we build and encourage and inspire each other. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. Please come back with us next month. Next month, Lena Polka of the Global Chamber is going to be talking about uh, social media and Google and how we can transform our businesses and help make them grow and help get visibility in our own branding. So please come join us. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion today. And thank you, Marisa, for being our prime spotlight. I'll see you guys next month. Have a great
Thank
one.
you all, fantastic
Bye.
ladies. Thank you.